أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واركعوا مع الراكعين. The blessed month of Ramadan Sharif is now nearing in proximity. The blessed verse of the Holy Quran, which I just recited a while ago, and I wish to reiterate at this instance, that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala states in the Holy Quran, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. A clear commandment has been laid down in the blessed and sacred and divine book of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, the Holy Quran, to offer prayers, to establish prayer, and to give zakat, and to bow your heads with those who bow in prayer. So Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala states in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ, and keep the obligatory prayer established, and pay zakat, and bow your heads with those who bow in prayer. So explicit and outright commandments have been laid down for the Ummah of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, to not only establish prayer but to pay zakat as well. As per customary practices, traditions, and societal norms, we as Muslims tend to pay zakat in the month of Ramadan. So zakat translates itself as an obligatory act and a clearly defined act of worship in the Holy Quran, the sacred texts, and in the ahadith of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. The literal word zakat itself and the literal construction and meaning of the word zakat itself refers to cleansing, to cleanse or to increase. So the Honorable Messenger, the most honorable Messenger, the most respected Prophet of Islam, the beacon of hope, the bearer of glad tidings, a messenger of peace and embodiment of love, an expression of mercy, an omen of happiness, a paragon of virtue, a sign of forgiveness, a paragon of tolerance, the unsurpassable model of behavior, the radiant one, the illuminated one, the most honorable one, the illuminated one, the unrivaled one, the unparalleled one, the seal of apostleship, the seal of prophethood, the beloved of Allah, the beloved of all, the warmer of hearts, the coolness to eyes, the beloved Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, is reported to have stated, and it is well recorded in Sahih Bukhari Sharif, that zakat is one of the pillars of Islam. The Muslim society was the first society to achieve social security, and zakat, considered as the first systemic legislation, was aimed at achieving social security in the Muslim society. And it is pertinent to note that mankind has never known, in all the annals of history, a system, a philosophy, a religion, a thinking process, a set of principles, a code that ensured security, perhaps social security of all of its citizens, and achieved equality between races, peoples and cultures, as it was achieved by Islam and put into practice by the Muslims itself. It is to be implemented by the Muslim government to guarantee that every needy person will have enough for himself and his dependents to live a dignified life in an Islamic republic. And this social security is available to every citizen who lives in an Islamic state. Not so long ago, the Western nations did not achieve social security until very recently. The first official manifestation of that social security appeared in the year 1941 when the United States of America and the United Kingdom, post the 18th Amendment, agreed that they needed to provide social security as well for its citizens. The Muslim society, the Holy Quran, and the teachings of the beloved Messenger, peace be upon him, are indeed unrivaled in nature. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, laid down the orders, conveyed the orders, in fact, of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala thousands of years ago, that you are to pay zakat. What is zakat in essence? Zakat in essence is whereby the well-stable, the financially stable, the economically stable citizens of the state, they endeavor for the betterment and welfare of the needy people. So this is that system generated which caters for the financially stable as well as the ones who are needy and poor. So this is our system. Thousands of years ago, the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, conveyed this message of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala that we as citizens of an Islamic republic, we as citizens of an Islamic state are bound to take care of the ones in need as well. Otherwise, the wrath of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala you shall face. So Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala has made it mandatory upon the Muslims to pay zakat. And it is indeed zakat as well which brings man or a person closer to Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala in proximity and gains his pleasure. It is recorded in Sahih Bukhari Sharif that the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, stated, there is no envy except in two. There is no envy except in two. A person whom Allah has given wealth and he spends it in the right way, and a person whom Allah has given wisdom and he gives his decisions accordingly and teaches it to the others. So giving zakat is one of those things that attracts the pleasure of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. It is another hadith of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, that the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, stated, zakat purifies a person's wealth. And then at another instance in Sahih Bukhari Sharif, Hazrat Aisha Siddiqa Tayyiba Tahira Zahida Abida radiyallahu ta'ala anha, she states that the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, stated, when zakat will be mixed or merged in a person's wealth, it will destroy and ruin that wealth. Thereby, explicit, outright instructions that we as Muslims are bound to pay zakat. This is one of those things that if you do not take it out of your wealth, it shall ruin your wealth. As my Sayyidi Shaykh Ahmad Mohsin Yusufi, my Baba Jan, my Piro Murshid, my spiritual axis, he states that the order of the world can change. The order of the world can change, but the words uttered by the beloved messenger cannot change. Subhanallah. So they're bound to happen. Subhanallah. So if the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, has stated something, it is bound to happen. There is no ifs and buts into it. If there has been a commandment laid down that you are to pay zakat, there are no ifs and buts into it. You are to pay zakat. Hazrat Buraida radiyallahu ta'ala anhu states, now this is another hadith of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, that nation who does not pay zakat, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala shall afflict that entire nation into famines and droughts. Thereby, an instruction, a commandment, an order to pay zakat, or otherwise a person shall face the unrivaled wrath of the majestic Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Now the incidents of Qarun at the time of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, it defines itself as one of the pivotal examples of when Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala asked him, instructed him, commanded him to pay to the needy, and he abstained from it. He stopped from paying to the needy. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala records the same in the blessed verses of the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Qasas. وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْكُنُوزِ مَا إِنَّ مَفَاتِحَهُ لَتَنُوبُ الْعُصْبَةِ أُولِي الْقُوَّةِ. And we gave him so many treasures that their keys were a heavy burden for a strong group. Now this person, Qarun, was so rich, he was so wealthy, that there was an entire group of people who would only keep the keys of his treasures secured. He was a man with that amount of wealth. So when Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala favored upon Qarun, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala then in turn commanded him, وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. And do favors to others the way Allah has favored you. So when Qarun was given the favor by Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala that he was given unparalleled amounts of wealth and treasures, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala then tested him. And Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala now commanded him. And the blessed verses of the Holy Quran records that now you are to spend in the way of Allah. This was nothing of your accomplishments. This was but a favor by Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And since this wealth is nothing but a favor upon you, you are to give it further to the needy as well. Thereupon, Qarun laid down such an example that he faced the wrath of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَىٰ عِلْمٍ إِنْدِي. He said, this indeed has been given to me because of my knowledge. So there he was, Qarun, being arrogant, showing off his egoistic desires and pleasures. So when Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala stated to Qarun that, oh Qarun, now that you've been given that much amount of wealth, which you cannot enumerate, then now you are commanded hereby to spend in the way of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Why? Because this is nothing but a favor upon you. This is I who gave it to you. So since I was the one who gave it to you, you are now to further spend it in the way of Allah to the needy. Qarun at that time went into arrogance. And he said these words, that it is indeed not your favor upon me, but that it is my own knowledge, my own skills and expertise, on account of which I gathered this wealth which I cannot enumerate. So he was being arrogant. Now there are two things to pertinently note. Firstly, he became arrogant. Secondly, he refused the commandments of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala had clearly asked him and ordered him to spend and to give money to the needy. He refused. And when he refused, then the Holy Quran further records that in Surah Al-Qasas, وَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ بِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضَ. We therefore buried him and his house, his entire wealth, into the earth itself, per se. So this is that example that we should learn from the example of Qarun. He was that person who was given innumerable amounts of wealth. But that was a favor upon him, was it not? That was a favor upon him by Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. That you've been bestowed with a favor, you've been given a favor. This is not yours, it has been given to you. And since it has now been given to you, you are to spend it further in the way of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Qarun refused, and thus he, along with his entire wealth, was buried into the earth alive. Therefore, a lesson to learn here, that we as Muslims have also been given a clear commandment. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala has stated this very clearly in the Holy Quran. And in fact, at a number of instances, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ, establish prayer. وَأَقِيمُوا الزَّكَاةَ, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ, and establish prayer and pay zakat.
Subhanallah.
وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. So we have also been given a clear commandment to establish prayer and to pay zakat. There are no ifs and buts into it. There was a person who did engage in ifs and buts, who did argue, and there was a person who refused to give out his wealth. And we have all seen what the repercussions were. We have all seen what the aftermath was. He, Qarun, along with his entire wealth, was buried into the ground alive. Why? Because he was arrogant. So he stated to Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala that, oh Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, this is not your favor upon me. This is my own knowledge, my own skills and expertise. Now we relate to the accounts of the man of ineffable grandeur and majesty in the realms of Islamic mysticism, the human manifestation of divine consciousness, the highest saint in the hierarchical structure of saints, the revered saint, the celebrated saint, the unprecedented saint, the unrivaled saint, the unparalleled saint, the most distinguished saint, the illuminated saint, the unfathomable saint, the sovereign of saints, the leader of saints, the eagle of the higher realm, the interpretation of the Holy Quran per se, the great intercessor, the mystic of Allah, the gnostic of Allah, the beloved of Allah, the beloved of the beloved of Allah, Hazur Ghaus-e-Azam Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiyallahu.
Subhanallah. Narae Takbir, Narae Risalat, Narae Risalat, Narae Haydari, Narae Ghausiyah.
Hazur Ghaus-e-Azam Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he was once engaged in worship. He was once engaged in worship and in remembrance of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala when he saw a cloud appear from the skies. Now the cloud said to Hazur Ghaus-e-Azam, O Abdul Qadir, it is on account of your innumerable worship that you've been forgiven prayers, and you may do the impermissible as well. For you the impermissible has now been made permissible. For you the haram has now been made halal. Now Hazur Ghaus-e-Azam Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, there is indeed a reason that he is not an ordinary saint but the leader of saints. In that minute second, Hazur Ghaus-e-Azam went into contemplation and he thought to himself, prayers were never pardoned upon the prophets as well, and the impermissible was never made permissible upon the prophets as well, then why me? And it was that very moment when Hazur Ghaus-e-Azam realized this, and he called out to that cloud by reciting La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim, that the disguise came off, the facade and the veil, it came off, and it was the Saturn itself there. And there the second attack of Saturn came. Then Saturn said, Iblis said, O Abdul Qadir, it is your knowledge which has saved you today. It is your knowledge which has saved you today. To that Hazur Ghaus-e-Azam replied, he said, verily, it is not my knowledge which has saved me, it is the favor of my Lord which has saved me.
Subhanallah.
Ghaus-e-Azam stated, verily, it is not my knowledge which has saved me, but it is indeed, and it is indeed the decision of my Lord, the favor of my Lord which has saved me. So Hazur Ghaus-e-Azam is at one instance, and then we see the accursed Qarun at the other place. Qarun denied the favor of Allah and he was buried in the ground itself. Hazur Wasi-Azam, he acknowledged and wholeheartedly accepted the favor of Allah, and he reached such a station that no one could ever reach that station. So Hazur Wasi-Azam Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the man of ineffable grandeur and majesty in the realm of Islamic mysticism. So paying zakat is very important for the Muslim society itself. It is where the well-stable people, they help the needy ones. Hazur Wasi-Azam Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he would wish for holes in his blessed hands, so that anything that comes into his hands, it gets distributed amongst the creation of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And I have seen this my entire life at Dargah Mohsiniya. Any person who's come onto the doors of this place, as per the instructions of Sayyidi Shaykh Muhammad Mohsin Munawwar Yusufi, everyone has been given something. And he has never been returned back empty-handed. This is what happens at the dargahs of Awliya-Allah. Hazur Data Sahab was once delivering a lecture. He was once delivering a sermon on zakat. This is recorded in Kashf al-Majub Sharif as well. Hazur Data Sahab was once delivering a lecture, a sermon on zakat. This also confirms that Awliya Allah would address the matters of Sharia and Islamic jurisprudence. So Hazur Data Sahab, he was once delivering a sermon on zakat. One of the disrespectful people, one of the disrespectful and disobedient persons from the public, one such person, he stood up. And he stood up before Hazur Data Sahab and he started arguing and he started disrespecting him. And he said, "Oh Hazur Data Sahab, why is it that you discuss these aspects of zakat with me? Why do you discuss this zakat with me, that I am to take my wealth out and give it to the needy and help them and endeavor for their welfare? Why do you ask me to do this? Why do you deliver a lecture to me on such a topic when I am myself not financially stable? I am not a financially stable person. So why do you give these lectures to me? There is no need of receiving and listening to these lectures from you on zakat when I am not to pay zakat. I have been pardoned. I am not financially stable." Hazur Data Sahab, he then got into his majestic anger, Jalal, and he said, "Seek forgiveness from Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. There might come a time that people start giving you zakat, that you go into such a state, such a weakened state, such a weakened and unstable state financially and economically, that people start giving you zakat. And when people start giving you zakat, you should then realize, and you will then realize this lecture of mine, as to whether and under what circumstances I can accept zakat and I cannot. So it might help you then as well. Therefore, Ramadan is now on the verge. And since it is on the verge, and as per societal norms, cultural attitudes and traditions, we tend to pay, most of us tend to pay our zakats in the blessed and sanctified month of Ramadan Sharif. Therefore, you are to pay zakat. That is a clear commandment which has been laid down in the Holy Quran and in the blessed hadith of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and there are no ifs and buts into it. There is a mandatory requirement that we as Muslims need to fulfill. So if you do consider and contemplate on giving zakat, we at this Dargah Mohsiniya, we provide education, in fact Quranic education, to the needy ones. Zakat in that respect will be much needed.